Welcome, everybody. We're excited to welcome each and every one of you to this ISS webinar on the pandemic, power, poverty, and looking at inclusivity, or rather exclusivity, especially in the urban context. My name is Lynn Zebeda, and I have the honor of being your moderator for today. And I studied myself at ISS many years ago, and it shaped my thinking in many ways. And I now work as a social entrepreneur, a researcher, with my own, our own social design studio. But I'm excited to sharpen our brains together again, ISS style today. And we have a lineup of wonderful speakers. Most are ISS academics, but we also have some very special guests. Many of the academics have an affiliation to the Vital Cities and Citizens Research Program at Erasmus University. And I cannot wait to dive into the program with you. You can see here on the screen what we will be doing today. Oh, this is so nice to see all the introductions. Hi, everyone. Nelun, Bharat, Pakistan, Namibia, Jan Rijders from the Netherlands, Kenya, Philippines, Bangladesh, old batches, new batches. Very special. Thank you for introducing yourselves. To go over the program very quickly, we will, well, this is our introduction, this is our start, and you will be welcomed by Inge Hutter by the ISS. Then we will go into a very thought-provoking column by Professor Thea Hilhorst, which will be followed by a panel discussion with Mausumi, Chetia, Kimani Joseph, Jaffer, Najar, Naomi from Stapele. There will be an option to ask questions to the panel, and you can do that by using the Q&A button. So we will not do that in the chat. There's a specific button in the bottom of your screen which says Q&A, and if you have a very important question to ask, then you can put it there for the panel, for the speakers. We will also have an artistic interlude from Kenya, and we'll reflect on what we learned here today with Naomi from Stapele. A couple of logistics. It's good to know that the webinar today is being recorded so that people who can't be here now can still watch it, or if you yourself would like to watch it back. And I think that's pretty much it. The Q&A function I've explained. I think we're ready to start. Hi, Amit from Germany. Everyone here, very nice. Okay, I would like to ask Inge Hutter, Director of ISS, to join me in welcoming all of you. Inge.
Yeah, thank you,
yes,
Lynn.
It works.
Yeah, I was empty screen first, but
it's, yeah, your
I
video.
put my video
yeah,
on as
there
well.
you
Yes,
are.
I'm
there.
there.
You are.
You
Wonderful.
Yes.
So nice to see you.
Nice
Welcome.
to see you too. Yeah, nice to see you, Lynn, as well. Yeah. And then a warm welcome to everyone. I'm so overwhelmed, so many people from all over the world. It really touches me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Why does it touch you?
Yeah, somehow because I feel connected then, and suddenly it feels that you're connected with everyone who is in the ISS community. Yeah. So I'm in the ISS now in The Hague, but I suddenly realized, like, yeah, so many people are now together all over the world.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger than yeah, definitely. And can I ask you, why does ISS choose to organize these events now? Why is it an important event to have?
Yeah, I think a warm welcome to everyone, of course. We ourselves, we are in the corona crisis and slowly coming out. And last night, the government announced that we can make more steps to come out. But it's one thing, it's really a pandemic. It's all over the world. And there are many countries in the global south, especially, that are still very much in the peak, and the conditions there are of course very different from what it is in the Netherlands. So I'm very happy that we organized it all together, and we hear also the voices from the global south. So it's quite important. Yes, yeah.
And what do you hope that this event will bring, or what do you hope we will do with this?
It's a very short event, 1 hour.
Yeah, it's 1 hour, yeah.
So I really hope that we will discuss, we talk, but actually that we also will look into then what can we do, because talking, doing research is very nice and very needed, but what can we do with it? So I
Exactly.
really hope that will be a kind of an outcome and that there will be a follow-up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, ISS style, as I said, I think that very much speaks to the goal of today, that we want to take a very critical but also empathetic look at what's happening in the current pandemic, and then especially to the people that we don't hear a lot about in the media and in the urban context specifically. And then, as you said, to inform ourselves and see how we ourselves can contribute to a more inclusive response. Yeah,
yes,
so that's
definitely.
an important mission we all have together here today for the next hour. Thank you, Inge, for welcoming us into this session, and let's try our best to make your wish come true.
Let's see. Thank you for facilitating. Yes, thank you.
Of course. Feeling connected with ISS community feels like being at home in Den Haag, is what someone is commenting. Yeah. Okay, so before we dive into the speakers, more of the speakers, let's see who is here today. We've seen a couple of introductions coming by, but let's see who we all are together. So there's a poll here that you can fill out. Well done, everyone is filling it out. Where are we? Almost there. Almost everyone has voted. Okay. All right, a few more seconds. Let's see the results. Okay, so we're quite spread out. We don't have anyone in Antarctica, that surprises me. But we're pretty much everywhere else. That's very nice to see. Okay, next question. Our next question. Yes. Did you ever, or do you now, study or work at ISS? Nice. A few more seconds to vote, or to put in your response. Nice. Look, 2/3 of us have. I'm sure there are some friends of mine in the audience. That's very nice to see. And it's also special to see that we've all been at ISS, but we've all spread out all over the world, and we're in so many different capacities and locations. And for those who haven't gone to ISS, don't worry, you're one of us today. We're all about inclusion. And it's very nice to welcome all of you here. All right. I'm excited to announce our first speaker for this webinar, and that's Professor Thea Hilhorst. And I have something to share with you. Hi, welcome, Thea.
Hi.
There we are. Thea.
Yes, can I start with my little bit of mental flossing,
yes,
everybody?
If I can introduce you very briefly.
Sure. Yeah.
You are a full professor at ISS and an expert when it comes to development in areas affected by disaster and conflict and fragility. And you focused on many dynamics in that. And you're also affiliated to the Vital Cities and Citizens program at Erasmus University. And you're here to offer us a good session of mental floss, as you call it, which is a brilliant term. And I hope that you will all enjoy it. Here's Thea's column for us on today's topic, pandemics, power and poverty.
Thanks. I've been working on disaster studies for the last 20 years, and when COVID-19 started, I was really impressed that this disaster was taken so seriously. Many governments were willing to put combating the virus over short-term economic gain. I found myself thinking, wow, if only they would do the same for climate change and other crises that are on my wish list to be resolved. However, it becomes increasingly clear that there are strong limitations to the bold and robust responses of top-down emergency management. Firstly, we seem to frame COVID-19 as a cause of everything, conflating the hazard with subsequent risks. Yes, COVID-19 is a nasty and infectious virus, but it is not the virus that dictates widespread food shortages or increased marginalization of the poor. It's the choice of people to close markets and tell farmers to stay in their houses instead of producing and trading food. And that's what causes hunger, not COVID-19. Secondly, there are many instances where governments have instrumentalized COVID-19 for other purposes, such as to curb the freedoms of civil society, to silence the media, or undermine political opponents. India, for example, I was told, has imprisoned more than 50 critical journalists on the pretext that they spread false information about COVID-19. Thirdly, while top-down policies and expert knowledge are required to address the crisis, there are also indications about the limitations of this approach. Top-down approaches may ignore, stifle, or expire local coping capacities, social networks, and small-scale formal and informal institutions. This may render the COVID-19 response counterproductive and have grave consequences. First, local institutions are people's first and very often only line of defense against crises like the virus. Where top-down policies don't reach out to communities to provide services, and when people cannot rely on local institutions, they become increasingly vulnerable. Why close schools instead of mobilizing teachers to help spread messages about personal hygiene in relation to COVID-19? In areas where state-society relations are already characterized by mistrust before the crisis, there's a high risk that people will not believe the messages of authorities about COVID-19. When the Ebola pandemic erupted in Sierra Leone several years ago, people sometimes hid patients just to avoid their hospitalization with the government. 3. Top-down policies that only focus on the virus can create other crises at the local level, including crises of livelihoods and food security. This can lead to adverse coping mechanisms that increase the risks of COVID-19. There are signals, for example, that some women in eastern DRC who have lost their work now resort to transactional sex to feed their families, which is a large health risk, of course. Everywhere in the world, people come into action, and we will hear about it today. Everywhere in the world, people come into action to deal with the crisis on their own terms. Let us together ensure that the response to COVID-19 is based on inclusion, solidarity, dignity, and respect. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Thea, for getting straight to the point of what we're here to discuss. Thank you very much. If you have an important question to Thea, she will join us again after the panel in the Q&A. But for now, I'm very happy that you gave us such a bird's eye view of the topic. So thank you. All right. Curious what you thought of that, all of you. Next, we will dive into our panel discussion. And for our audience, as I explained in the beginning, if you have a very important, brilliant question that needs to be asked, you can put it in the Q&A using the Q&A button you can see at the bottom. And if your question is for one specific speaker, please indicate that. And we also ask you to please frame your question in the context of the topic that we're discussing. So how to become more inclusive in our response to this pandemic. So we have 4 amazing panelists with us today. I'm going to introduce them all and invite them to join me now. We have Joseph Kimani. I should say Kimani Joseph, or Kimani, who is a community organizer and development practitioner at Slum Dwellers International. And what I like in how he describes his work is it's about looking beyond doing and facilitating learning and reflection and innovating for a very transformative type of urban development. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to have you, Kimani. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Lynn.
Then we have Naomi van Stapele, who is assistant professor at ISS in the field of urban governance and development. And she has a very rich experience, and she also has decades of experience in Nairobi, where she even has a little home, she told me, and where she has been collaborating a lot with Kenyan practitioners on that transformation. And I've gotten to know her as an all-around radiant human, so it's very nice to also have you here. Thank you, Naomi, for joining. Okay, so we have, thank you. We have Kimani and Naomi, sounds nice together, that focus on the Kenyan context. And we have two other researchers who both happen to work on the Indian context. The first one is Mausumi Chetia. Welcome, Mausumi. She is a doctoral researcher looking at the human security status of disaster-displaced populations in Assam, India specifically. She also worked under the flagship of Vital Cities and Citizens. She also, before that, has years of experience working in the field, working with people, disaster survivors, and at-risk communities. And I think you're very driven in your work, very passionate, and that's inspiring. So thank you for joining us. Thank you. Okay, and our last panelist is Jaffer Najar, who is also a researcher at ISS, and he's presently engaged with a research project on human trafficking, also again, part of Vital Cities and Citizens. And he focuses on the voices of marginalizing the people who have been trafficked, basically, and amplifying that discourse. And he has also a lot of experience prior to this, working and leading research on the topic. It's a very heavy topic that you research, and you're a very kind person, and I really admire that combination. So thank you for joining us, Jaffer.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we are all together. Let's take a first look at the people that you're researching, that you're working with. And I think it's important to really see them today to the extent that we can. So my first question to all of you will be what the situation is of the groups of people that you're researching or that you're organizing in this time of COVID-19. And all of you have been so kind to send us images of the context that you're working in. So we'll have the images to illustrate what you tell us. I will share my screen with you so that everyone can see. Okay, here we are with the first image. And I would like to ask you, Kimani, sorry, I keep saying Joseph, but I really prefer
it's
Kimani.
Okay, Lynn. Yes,
Kim.
Yes,
my friend.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn.
So if we have a look, where are we in this picture? What do we see?
In this picture, probably, let me start with what you will not see clearly. People living here, mostly young people, very innovative, very creative. And I'm saying this because I'm one of the products of this kind of environment.
Yes.
And very rarely, so the best.
As in you grew up in a place like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so you would see the sports people, the most creative people in the city, the industrious city people who are involved in production of the city. So these are the people who come from this environment, but also this environment is of the people, and this is Mathare, basically a picture of Mathare.
In Nairobi?
Yes, in Nairobi. It's one of the informal settlements, and SDI has profiled close to 200 informal settlements within the city of this nature, because there's a confusion about informal and slums. And majority of these huge settlements, like Mathare, which is like the 4th largest in Nairobi, would be found very close to the city center. This is because, again, of the opportunities that people perceive the city is providing of employment and other opportunities. But also when you look at the dwellings, the housing structures are quite small in size. They are 10 by 10, depending on the generosity of the structure owner or the person who put up the house. Maybe a 10 by 10 would even be a comfortable room. Mostly nowadays you'll find a 8 by 10, 9 by 10, depending. And very disadvantaged in terms of needs. You wouldn't find a lot of access to essential services in this environment. And the densities, when you look at the densities of those structures, actually we've counted, there are about 200 to 250 households living in 1 acre piece of land, just to appreciate. But you can see some structures are coming on top of what we see here, just to show.
Maybe to ask also, because the inhabitants of these homes that we see, what is their life like now in times of COVID-19? What's their situation like right now?
The situation is bad because, like I mentioned, services, you will find a toilet before even COVID and even now, a toilet facility being shared by close to 200 families. And you're talking of 200 people, which is about 20 families sharing one facility. So that means access of a facility like a toilet where you'll find water becomes a problem because you don't have household water connection. And of course, issues of waste, sanitary issues. And when you talk of sharing facility, you're talking of accessing them during the day and night. So when a curfew, for instance, is put, it means the situation becomes quite challenging to mainly women and girls who cannot come out at night to access the facility that is being shared during most of the time. So that means people will resort to other ways of dealing with that, which will compromise a lot of the hygiene situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's very basic that we all say we need to wash our hands, but what if you don't have water? Or what if you don't have even the basic sanitation? Yeah. Naomi, would you like to add anything to what you've seen in the situation with the people you're working with together with Kimani?
Yeah, so as part of Vital Cities and Citizens, Kimani and I are working together with a broad research collective, which is also an intervention at the same time. So it's a people-driven urban planning collective. And the moment COVID hit, we right away integrated our response. It's a wide variety. It's a network of many different types of community-led organizations, from youth groups. So you see here one youth group, to social justice centers, to women groups, to churches, to even quite large organizations. And they all work together. They're all from this particular neighborhood in the COVID response. So what we've seen, right, from the first weeks after the government regulation, so it's not even just COVID as a virus that affects the lives of the people that we work with. It's actually the government regulations that really has a devastating impact on them. For one, since January 101, since today, people, especially young men, have been shot dead by police. So as Kimani just mentioned, for women, it's very dangerous to go out at night because there's less people, and then making use of sanitation, toilets, etc. is very dangerous in terms of sexual violence. But then for young men, it's actually has become very dangerous to venture outside or come home too late because you're in a traffic jam, for instance.
And that's under the banner of we're supposed to be in a lockdown, so I can do that. How does that relate to the regulations in themselves?
So the regulations is the curfew. The curfew
Yeah,
is supposed to, of course, minimize mobility and therefore also spread of the virus. But what this, of course, had, first of all, the police took advantage of this right away. From the first night the curfew was installed, the first killings happened, and activists that we work with had to document. Actually, right now, today, as we speak, a case of a young man in this neighborhood, a boy of 13 who was shot dead in his house. He was on his balcony. The police is now charged, is now being charged, and is under prosecution. Right now, as we speak, it's going on. So
yeah, it's a very tragic, well, I wouldn't, yeah, it's a very extreme, how do you say that? Yeah, I don't even have words to describe this. It's so, yeah.
It's devastating because
devastating, but it's also just so, yeah, it's so blunt, and so how can this happen so instantly? It tells a lot about the vulnerabilities that are already existing before, and about the tensions that are already happening, and how this like straight away strengthens and amplifies that terrible inequality that's already going on. So yeah,
and state-sanctioned violence. So the police also abuse their power now to extort people even more. They already did that, but that's, of course, I think COVID sort of has exacerbated everything, all the inequalities and oppressions that were going on to such an extreme scale.
Yeah, thank you for just being honest and telling us like it is in this. I would like, we'll come back, but I would like to also give the others a chance to tell us about their the groups of people that they're working together with and researching. Mausumi, can I invite you next to tell us about the life of the people that you are researching in this time of COVID-19? What is happening to the people that you're researching now, in the now?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So I'm Mausumi. I am from Assam in India. It is one of the northeastern states in India, and I am looking at people who have been displaced by a disaster almost 2.5 decades ago. So I'm looking at a long-term displacement, and this is situated in multiple locations, and they are urban and semi-urban. So what is happening is that during, just like what Naomi said, for example, that there was nothing directly happening per se with the community when it came to COVID, but what we saw, especially in the initial first 2 months, because of the way the lockdown came, all of these groups, the families I'm working with are daily wage workers. So might not be necessarily traveling as seasonal migrants out of their state, but within the state of Assam, they travel for work. So what happened was that a lot of people, mostly men basically, got stuck in their workplaces. And the irony of the matter is that because of the location of our state, and especially the districts I'm working at, are so far away from the national capital's gaze, it is kind of difficult for people sitting in Delhi to even understand the kind of issues that might be going at that, you know, locality.
Because what does it mean for them that they are stuck at their workplaces?
Meaning, for example, a lot of the men in the families I work with are construction workers, and so during the time when on 25th of March, when the lockdown was announced, people were in their workplaces. Some were probably about to come back home after a month or 2 weeks, you know, take a break in the weekend and then go back because they earn at a daily basis. But a lot of them were, you know, separated. So one of the key things that happened that I saw in the initial first 2 months, now we have entered the 4th month, I think, there was a disintegration among the families, a lot of them with young children. So a lot of the women had to do work on their own because of lockdown. There is restrictions, you know.
So the families are separated for months on end.
Yes, and getting the food, you know, the savings that they have were very quickly exhausting. So that was one of the key effects. And the other one, of course, as we saw gradually, which really is affecting is children, basically education. We have a lot of government initiatives on digital education. But what is happening is that these families do not have smartphones to start with, to access to education. So then there comes the question of inequality that a disaster brings. Here you can see the photograph. This is an eroded bank of the river Brahmaputra taken last January. So families who have lived here originally have gone back to the previous picture that you saw, to those places about 2 decades back. So yeah, and the obvious effect is on livelihoods of people, and then that percolates into their everyday issues.
A cascade of issues, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Jaffer, I would also like to invite you to tell us very briefly about the same, about how the people that you're researching are being impacted by COVID-19 and by the government regulations that have followed.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, and hello, everyone. My research is like a part of the Vital Cities and Cities project, and as you can see, the screen on the the picture on the screen, it's largely I'm focusing on the urban suburbans and within the frame of like who are seen as victims of trafficking in larger framework. And I largely engage with construction workers and sex workers in Kolkata. And this picture is like one of the largest red light areas in Kolkata known as Sonagachi. And so I have been researching and engaged with this group of collaborators and participants.
Yeah.
So far the situation there is like there are three major tensions which are coming out of this crisis. One is that, as Mausumi was saying, that they are daily wage workers. So it's that economic blockage is there, and this economic blockage is basically impacting not only the one person, it's impacting the entire, entire stakeholders who are involved into it, like the families of the workers.
Yeah.
And the second thing is like most of these workers are migrant into the cities. And they're also migrants from the neighborhood countries like Bangladesh and Nepal and other countries. So before the lockdown, some of them have gone back to their native places, to their native villages. But these immigrants and migrants are the undocumented workers. They cannot go back to their places because of lockdown and strict.
They cannot find the formal support mechanism
in
that sense.
Yeah. So this area basically accommodates around 12,000 to 15,000 sex workers. And right now, I have from the organization that I've been in touch, so it's like around 6,000 to 7,000 sex workers are still inhabiting this area. And this is the street, one of the famous street in that red light area. So they have some of the civil societies have come forward to help them, but it's not only food. They are providing some food or essential kits, but the problem is they have other issues, like they have to. It's an urban space. They are migrants. They have to pay utilities like
rents. Exactly. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I was speaking to one of the trans sex workers a few days ago, and she was sharing that there are civil society organizations or volunteer groups. They come forward to give us some food kits, but she is going through some transformation, like she's transforming her body from transgender to a woman, and she's going through treatment, and for treatment she needs medicine, and for medicine she's working as a sex worker. So all of these things is impacting her life.
Things that a lot of people do not think about at all, the needs of a human like that, the very intersectional issues that a person like that encounters. Yeah. Thank you, Jaffer, for already enlightening us a bit more on what I wanted to ask next, which is, as we're all saying, the people that you all are researching and organizing and working with together with have been in vulnerable positions all along, and there has been inequality in the systems that they move in. So I wonder if you could say a bit more about what exactly is going wrong here in this time, like even more, what exacerbates it exactly? Are they somehow falling through the cracks because they're not visible, or is something else happening here that exacerbates their situation? Joseph, maybe I can invite you to speak on that.
Yes, when as part of our intervention in the collective Naomi mentioned, and through Mungano and other groups, we've been collecting daily, weekly reports from the community, just to tell us the assessment, to tell us who is responding to the issues and how they're responding. And what we realized in our first phase of the collection, in the first 40 days or so, there was a lot of state absence, actually, to be precise. Even now, it hasn't been that significant. Of course, we see the state every day in the daily briefs of what is happening, who has been affected and how, and there are a lot of measures and guidelines, sometimes threatening, and then a lot of force of the police when the state is present. So the crux has been that community have felt left out, and this is forcing people now to come out, to disregard the measures that have been put regarding COVID, which is unfortunate because now the numbers are increasing, but people have gotten tired of waiting because they can't see any support, and especially in the situation that we are in.
Yeah. So it's very straining, the situation. Mausumi, when we were preparing, I found it's an eye-opener how you are looking at this crisis through a disaster lens. And I want to ask you to share very briefly what that means. Like, what is the most important insight for you in your work when you look through a disaster lens?
So India is one of the most disaster-prone countries in Asia, in the world, and Assam sees every year floods, landslides, mild earthquakes, and it's a common thing. So the people I'm working with, as I told, have been affected by a disaster directly almost 2 decades back. But what is happening is that right now they have become part of the, say, semi-urban or urban poor communities. Right, so in a crisis time like this, we see humanitarian workers, providing relief, etc., besides the government. But these are the people who kind of fall out of that, system. First and foremost, when it comes to humanitarian aid and relief work. The second thing is, which I also wrote in my ISS blog, was that right now, I think at least for about 5 to 6 months in Assam, it reels under heavy floods. As we speak, there are 37,600 people who have been affected by flood and almost 1,081 in relief camps. Okay. And there has been oil, gas well that has blasted, displacing almost 7,000 people, keeping in relief. So in such a situation, what is important or interesting also as a researcher to see is that we talk of maintaining hygiene, we talk of social distancing, and all of these things, which are of course fundamental, but what happens to all these things when a disaster strikes? And as we are speaking, it is happening in different parts of India, and in our home state, in Assam, it is happening. And so I think that is the most difficult part. How does the inequalities become much more vivid and clear during a time like this, because it is double folded, people are already marginalized. There is already difficulty in terms of economic survival. Then there is a pandemic, and then there is a disaster. So
exactly,
marginalization keep increasing. So
it stacks on. And I find it very fascinating how indeed the vulnerabilities over time also stack on. As you say, like these a lot of the people you work with have been in a disaster, have been displaced by a disaster 2 decades ago. So and it's still a major vulnerability in this time right now.
I mean, they are still getting flooded in the new places that they live in. So it's an impoverishment over decades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, I would like to open this very interesting conversation up to the questions from the audience. And as I said, we're with so many people all together, we cannot unfortunately answer all of them, but we will have room for around 2 or 3 with the time that we have. So we will select a couple of questions. And the first one was a question from Kasate Alemu. And the question is, the issue of equity is now becoming an issue in most cities of Africa. Some daily laborers lose their job due to COVID-19, as you have also spoken to, the panelists. Some don't have basic services and even food to eat. What is the response from the government for instance, in the countries that you speak of? I wonder who wants to answer to that question? What's the response to that people don't even have food to eat and have no basic services? It's a very, I mean, you've all been speaking to this already.
Yeah, we've said the minimum support that comes from the government.
Yeah.
What has been happening, there's a lot of collection of data of most vulnerable people. And this is directed to cash transfers. In the rural context, counties were responding by giving farmers seeds to grow food, which has really resulted to something positive because looking at the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. So there has been some positive aspects in regard to a bit of support coming. Of course, it's never sufficient.
But it has worked for some groups.
Yeah, because they don't have data in regard to how many people they need to really take care of. So there is a lot of assumption in terms of who they need to reach to.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumption and not enough knowledge in what is actually happening with people. Yeah, Naomi, you would like to add to that?
This is an ongoing conversation also between Kim and me in the collective that we're part of, because the data.
What collective is that?
Sorry, the Madara, the urban plan, the people-driven urban planning. So we call it the Madara Special Planning Area Research Collective. So it has a long name, but it's called MSPARC. So that's the research collective.
Good name.
Yes, MSPARC, and we try and it right now it's very much focused on a community-led COVID-19 response because of the government absence in terms of support and services and overly present in terms of violence. Yeah. So what this collective wants to do, and it has it's a quite a large network. It tries to also it of course it has all kinds of activities. So the hand wash station that you saw in the picture. With youth groups, managed by youth groups, who then also inspire each other, hopefully also to follow certain hygiene rules. But the other aspect that Kimani is now alluding to is the assumptions. So there are particular assumptions about youth, for instance, and of course, youth have been absolutely neglected by both government and NGO regulations in informal settlements, both in Nairobi, Mombasa, and we also got information from Kisumu, because of all kinds of assumption and lack of really understanding what the particular vulnerabilities that come together in the lives of youth. And youth are also, especially young men, are criminalized and not only marginalized, they're also criminalized. And I think that's where, and that comes together, and that's why, I mean, the police killings is one aspect, but also they lack money, and they're completely excluded also from all kinds of other interventions. So what we've tried to do is see how we can include youth through this research, but also through our action, as, for instance, community health volunteers. But that, of course, then you need to also have a very good community health volunteer system from the government. And the government right now is rolling out this COVID-19 response, relying on community health volunteers without giving them stipends or salary, giving them training, equipment, the health facilities around their path. So it's quite
a lot of assumptions that you can just do that and it will work. Yeah,
exactly. So that's how we try to work both on the national and the county level, as well as on the ground, how we can then strengthen community health volunteers to work and already work together with you. So also that NGOs and government cannot just come in and do their thing without the permission from the community, because that happens a lot. There's a lot of sort of data mining going on in these communities that really badly affects also people who are sick, right? They're invaded in their homes and so on. So that's what MSPARC also tries to do in this.
Very interesting. Jaffer, I see that you also wanted to respond to this question.
Yeah, I can speak a little about in context of India. For example, government has given some relief package, but the problem with the communities that I am engaged with is like they have been largely seen criminalized, because the sex work in India is like a semi-legal thing, and also the government has used the direct cash transfer policy to transfer money to these marginalized group. The problem with these communities is that out of stigma and out of criminalization, they are not able to have their bank accounts. So not going to reach to them. So it is like they have been
the very basic conditions are not met and cannot be met.
So they have already been excluded by the government policies.
Yeah. I have an interesting question here from a different angle, which says from Mohammed Saleh. Hi, we know him. In urban centers of the developing world, since more digital services and jobs available now, particularly for those skilled women workers who earlier were having restricted mobility, how do you feel this will transform future incidents of exclusivity and poverty and within a country inequality? So the digital services and jobs, and let's try to keep it in the context of this conversation. How does that make a difference? The innovation, the tech, the digital possibilities. How can that help with inclusion in the response? Would anyone like to speak to that?
Okay, I can come in.
I think, okay, yeah, let's hear from you, Jaffer, and then from Kimani.
Yeah, in terms of like sex workers, they have already like started, doing online kind of services. So I can
Interesting.
See, yeah, they are like, providing services to clients.
Could you speak up a bit more? I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, so I'm saying in terms of sex workers, so many of the sex workers have started, options, online options because of the COVID-19. So this is what I can say that in terms of digital, inclusivity, like they are also trying to engage in these new platforms actually.
Yeah. Kimani.
Yes, I will quickly say we still have a lot of challenge in terms of people accessing even internet. Today, I had to join in and then rejoin again because of internet. But you can imagine in the informal settlements and in the rural context, the challenges of, the government have tested telling students to go online and study. We are all laughing because how many people have access to internet? Of course, telephone is available maybe in one household or so, but internet is a challenge. But we've seen a bit of innovation being shared in the media of young people who are innovating and exploiting the opportunity on the digital platform, but still a minimal number. So majority of young people are disadvantaged because of this.
Yeah. So again, it is actually, there is still a very real digital divide, is what you're saying. That's not easily crossed just now in this time. Yeah. Mausumi, I would like to give you the floor.
I mean, it's just what Kimani said. I think a few weeks back, a student committed suicide died by suicide in southern state of Kerala. One of the reasons she stated was due to the inaccessibility for the online education rolled out. Wow. Yesterday in Assam, a 15-year-old child died by suicide for the same one of the
wow.
For example, like the communities, families I'm working with, they take microfinance loans to even buy clothes or food for their children. So for those kind of families to even have a smartphone, they have a smaller basic phone among 6-7 people in the family. So the digital divide, as much as we laud the government for taking out these, new age innovations, I think for a community for communities like where Joseph is working, I'm working, I think it kind of broadens and widens the divides that already exist.
So what we're saying is there's maybe bubbles, little groups of people who know how to take advantage of those solutions, but actually they can also exacerbate inequality because not everyone can reach those solutions to start with. Yeah. Thank you for keeping it so real today. I think it's very important to just tell it like it is, like you are doing. And maybe as a last little question, from one of you, what do you feel really works? What's a strategy or an intervention that you've seen that you're like, yes, we need more of that to make the response to COVID more inclusive? Does any one of you have an answer to that? Mausumi is glowing in her golden lights.
Yeah, it's
tell us.
So it's not directly related to my community, but something which I saw. I'm right now based in my home in Delhi, and what the things that happened were, of course, very, very depressing. All that we saw about the migrant crisis and all of that. But what was interesting was that beyond the government response and the typical humanitarian method of responding, I think a lot of volunteer groups were formed instantly. Right. Like I volunteered.
Everyone is saying yes, yes.
Yeah, groups. So I think, and the use of social media in a good way, like, sending a tweet to the local administration. A lot of the local groups did that here, and people were able to send back people, say, from southern part of India to, say, northeast to Assam, young girls who are working in factories, etc. So what was very encouraging was this initiative, but I think that that cannot be an alternative to what needs to be actually done.
No, but it's still encouraging that it happens.
Yes.
Kimani, did you want to add something here? Naomi, we'll talk.
In support, it's true. What we've seen, when everybody retired, they were told to stay home.
Yeah.
Community groups were very active. Everyone now is relying on community organizations and structures for information, which is not also there. So lack of also information, and this exposed actually the government ignorance about the people. Yeah, and every time we go to forums, we will hear we don't have that information, and it's the government saying they don't have information. So we found groups supporting the government with information, even in terms of where possible isolation centers can be, where there are gaps in terms of water supply and services. So all this has really exposed the service industry of the government to be quite inadequate in that sense.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of knowledge coming from the community and a lot of identification of opportunity, actually. Thank you for that. Naomi, in the interest of time, we're going to have to round off this part of the conversation. I know that there's so much more to say. I know that there's so many more interesting questions. I recommend everybody to go to the ISS blog, where most of our speakers have written a lot as well, and you can dive into the topics even more. I found it very rich. I spent hours and hours on that blog when I actually discovered it. So please do go to the blog, issblog.nl, I believe. You'll see the link later. Thank you to our panel for sharing your insights. I think they're relevant for a whole lot of people. And as we find it important to not just speak about people, but rather include people directly, we have asked an artist from Nairobi, Alexander Ikawah, who's a very talented guy. I met him in Nairobi a whole bunch of times, actually. And Naomi knows him as well, and Kimani probably does as well. He's a writer and a poet and a photographer and a visual artist. And I believe he's hiding out or he's waiting out the pandemic in the rural area with his mother. So his connection is in and out. He was just here, but I believe his connection is gone now. But we do have something he created for us specifically for this day. So from a voice of someone that needs to be included, we'd like to give you his little piece of art that he made for us.
Say revolution, fire, fire. You say fire burn. Revolution, fire, fire. Revolution, fire, fire. When I say revolution, fire, fire, you say fire burn. Revolution, fire, fire. Revolution, fire, fire. They told us the youth would take over the earth when tomorrow comes, but it's been years now, and surely youth is almost gone. They told us education would be some sort of master key after we were done, but it's been years now, and it is they that still keep us down. Bob Marley said, everywhere is gonna be war until the philosophy of violence is no more. And Fela Kuti said, Everything scatter, scatter. Them leave sorrow, tears and blood. Them regular trademark. We stand today against oppression. We stand today against police brutality in every nation. We pray, Jah Rastafari, make strong the hand of you and I. Raise your fist up higher. Light the revolution fire. All right, revolution fire. Revolution fire. Revolution fire. Revolution fire. Revolution fire. Reggae lift us higher. Fulfill us desire. Revolution fire, fire burn.
Wow, that was Alex's take, and I very much value this. And I would like to invite Naomi to reflect together with me as we're rounding off the session. It went so fast, our hour together with all of us. We discussed so much. We had a sharp overview from Thea in the beginning. We had an important panel discussion where actually a lot of similar insights were shared across the groups that we are working with. And we had a contribution from Alex, and we have a very diverse audience. We know that everyone from ISS spread out to become researchers and professors and practitioners and program officers and directors of different organizations. So what was important for us all is to end with, okay, we've gotten more insight, we've gained more insight. What's next? What can we do to create a more inclusive response from our capacity?
Thank you very much. And let me pick up where Alex left us. Fire, the burning fire. I think there's change. There's a spirit of change going all over the world. I think it's inspiring, and it's also in response to a lot of threat, a lot of risk, a lot of very, very dire situations. But there's also a lot of hope. There's a lot happening.
Yeah.
And of course, when something changes dynamic, of course, the youth are at the center. And I really like that combination in his piece about fire, revolution, and the youth at the center. And I think this speaks to all of us across the globe. And what comes out of this session, and I think this is what we can take with us to reflect on, but also to act on, is three things that are all connected to research. And I think I have to reiterate what Kimani said twice, because I counted, is about the importance of data collection, the importance of research. And research is not just about exposing how COVID-19 and government regulations and the economic crisis, how it affects marginalized and criminalized people in very vulnerable urban settings, such as is the focus of Vital Cities and Citizens, but then also in migration, for instance, to rural areas. Of course, that is one dimension that's really crucially important, and that was really touched upon. I think those
assumptions that were mentioned before.
Yes, exactly. To understand more about how people are in particular settings are, for instance, affected by COVID-19. And then I think the second part of research is how particular government interventions, especially the top-down interventions, and NGOs also have to be included here, as also was touched upon here and there, how they also affect or sometimes are very ineffective or detrimental even to what is going on in a particular context, where, and that's
locally,
the third, exactly, in these local communities, where people, as also came out tremendously and brilliantly, people themselves respond first. They're actually the first responders, and they have the local expertise, the solidarity mechanisms, and the historical linkages that actually are all deployed in responding to crisis. And that came out really well. I mean, that came out in all the research that was discussed. And I think research can then also shed a light on it, but then also can translate again to action, and then that can also then be part of research again. So I think the tying it back to Thea Hilhorst, Professor Thea Hilhorst column at the beginning, it's very important to really understand what is going on in these settings, to understand contextualized responses, and then maybe take a notion such as collaborative governance and see how government as authority and also NGOs can come in to strengthen community mechanisms, local solutions to problems that are global.
See what works and what can we scale in that sense.
Yeah, and scale is more about how then to maybe replicate and translate it to other contexts instead of scaling up. And one of the examples that we work with is a community-led cash transfer, which really looks at who really needs this money, and not just sort of a blanket assumption that, oh no, it's single women that need money, or it's only the elderly, or so this is
you don't know.
And then you also have a social accountability tied in. So I think the three dimensions that how research can actually then connect, first of all, expose, bring out what is going on in the particular situations. The second is how COVID, of course, is affecting them, but also how the government regulations and how NGOs engages these communities and how that affects them. And then also how all kinds of local mechanisms can be brought out and strengthened through research that can then lead to action. So these three dimensions are crucial.
Yeah, wow. I'm glad we have a recording of that so we can all look back and act on it. Yeah, thank you, Naomi. Thank you for this reflection. I think that's exactly what Inge was wishing for. And I'm happy that we got to share this hour together. We meant to take a good, critical and empathetic look at what's happening in the current pandemic, especially in the urban context. And I think we did. We got acquainted with some groups that we would never maybe know so much about, and I think it really was very rich and insightful, and just asks for a lot more discussion and collaboration to make the response more inclusive. So thank you again, Naomi. Thanks to all our panelists. Thank you, Thea, for your wonderful column. Thank you here for all our participants to indeed be connected with ISS again and sharpen our thinking and be critical and be honest and real about what we see happening. Thank you very much. And I want to be mindful of our time. Our time is up, but Alex actually made 2 poems for us. So for those of you who still have 2 minutes left to enjoy the second part, his second art piece, we have another one. And this one speaks exactly to what the panel was talking about the clash or not clash, or what's the dynamics between the unemployed young people in informal settlements and the police, what's happening in Nairobi. And Alex, being the artist that he is, has a little twist for us in terms of inclusivity and exclusivity. So I think only a few of us will really be able to understand to the full extent of what he is speaking about. You will see why. And the rest of us are going to have to feel it out and enjoy the dimensions of what he has put together. So thank you all for being here. And here we go with the final piece from Alex.
Honorable adjudicators, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before you is Ominjare Wodatieno, ready to present to you a shairi entitled My Boys na My Beast. Welcome. Umejipin, umetoka kuchachisha msee. Unajua rada sio safe.
umejibring, wase wanashikisha msee, umejisunda hapo hapo base, zimekushika sasa. Wewe umelost kwa riba na maarifu, umejinice kwa sana, si unado, unavutia mkoba after this, na umelalisha kwanza, unajulikana face. So masanse washakutrace na hujashikanisha rada, washajiplace au wanangojea the rest. Jo wamecrash ngola, ndo hao beasts mkona huanga kwenye face, na ameikoko mzeya na ameng'oa, anawika lala chini freeze. Sasa popote vijana huwa wamechuchumaa, hutokea watu wa kuwatwaa. Ukiingia mitaa utapigwa na butwa, utasikia twa twa twa. Utapata glasi kwa barabara imetapakaa, vitoa machozi risasi hewani zikipaa. Siasa na ghasia midomoni imejaa, huku shule hakuna chokaa, watoto wana njaa. Simamishwa kwa jamii za masaa utakaa, viongozi wakipitishwa kwa benzi zinang'aa. Shikwa koo na dingo hiyo place we ukaa, maepiko mageti za MP kuharibu masaa. Sasa kwa ghetto maboys na mabistu wamekuwa ile hali ya ukishtua na shtua, shutisha ni shutishe, usitutishe, nyambisha ni nyambishe, tuone nani mzee. Thank you.